In commemoration of 103rd anniversary of the Armenian Genocide, thousands of Armenians and non-Armenians alike gathered together at the crossroads of the world, Times Square in New York City, to demand justice for victims of 1.5 million Armenians who were massacred by Ottoman Empire in 1915. The large number of people gathered at Times Square and around the world continues to show that the issue of recognition of Armenian genocide remains front and center for all Armenians and the rest of civilized world. Since 1980s, this event has been organized by the Knights and Daughters of Vartan with participation of all major Armenian organizations. Present at the event, which had a theme of truth, recognition and justice, were members of Armenian clergy, representatives of Armenian organizations, notable community leaders, accomplished artists and athletes, and of course, staunch supporters of Armenian community, representatives of U.S. Congress and Senate. The Astikner vocal ensemble of St. Gregory the Illuminator Mission Parish of Brooklyn, under the leadership of Maria Sahakian, started the program by performing Armenian and American anthems, followed by invocation by Archbishop Oshakan Choloyan, Primate of Eastern Prelacy.
We are once again assembled here at this crossroads of the world in the great city of New York that is witness to human liberty and respect for human life. We give thanks to you for having bestowed the grace of your resurrection upon the Armenian nation and the many blessings bestowed upon us, your faithful children. On this day of remembrance of the sainted martyrs of 1915, we bow and pray before them, seeking their intercession for the blessings of liberty and justice for all and the destruction of evil.
The MCs of the event were Nevaeh Barlerian and Armen Macomber. Armenian Missionary Association of America Executive Director Zaven Khanjian made remarks.
Հավաքված ենք ոգեգոճելու ցեղասպանության զոհերու հիշադակը եւ թափ տալու հայ ժողովրդի շարունակվող արդար թադի պայքարին։ Պիտի ոգեգոճենք եւ սակայն անհնարին է չանդրադառնալ հայրենիքի տարածքին տեղի ունեցող ժողովրդային փողոքի խաղաղ ալիքին եւ անոր թարնություններուն դունդվող գուտակված բոլոր պատճառներուն։ Հայրենիքի ապահովության քերակուն շահերը նկատի ունենալով զսպվածության եւ հանդուրժողության գոչ կուղենք բոլոր կողմերուն։ Գիտակից ենք, թե հայրենիքի ամենաթանկագին հարստությունը անոր քաղաքացին է եւ իշխանություններ քոյություն ունին ծառայելու այդ ժողովրդին, երաշխավորելու անոր ապահովությունը, լսելու անոր ցայնը եւ այդ ցայնին մեջ են իմանալու անոր խդացած պատկամը։
For many years now, longtime supporter of Armenians and Armenian causes, New York Senior Senator Chuck Schumer has been present at Times Square annual gathering to show his support.
I extend my greetings to all of you. Harev! I would like to take a moment first to commemorate, remember, the victims of the Armenian Genocide and their descendants. So many in this audience have parents, grandparents, great aunts or uncles, relatives of all kinds who were slaughtered during the shameful crime against humanity. If you had a relative who died in the genocide, raise your hands. Let the Turks see that. Let the American government see that. These are the people who know and tell the truth. Now, every year, I have joined you on this solemn day because I believe from the bottom of my heart that it's our sacred duty to honor the victims of the Armenian Genocide, Metz Yegern, by pushing for more widespread recognition of the horrors they suffered. I'm a supporter of Senator Menendez's bill, the Armenian Genocide Resolution. As long as there is air in my lungs, I will continue to support ensuring our foreign policy appropriately reflects the nature of the genocide. And you know what, folks? The size of this crowd, your energy and your spirit show that the deniers of the Armenian genocide will never be able to kill the truth. And the tide is shifting. Just a few months ago, two of President Obama's top foreign policy advisors apologized because they didn't recognize the mass slaughter of Armenians as genocide. It is time for this White House to learn from their mistakes. It is time for President Trump to publicly and officially acknowledge the Armenian genocide. As every good Democrat, good Republican, and good independent should do. It's the American thing to do.
Another staunch supporter of Armenians, New Jersey Senator Robert Menendez, made remarks.
When we gather to remember these victims of genocide, we are also standing up to historical attempts of revisionism and suppressing the truth. The government of Turkey has long spent countless dollars to recruit lobbyists willing to trumpet lies and make excuses for the atrocities that its predecessors committed. But all the money in the world cannot suppress the truth. Portraying the extermination of 1.5 million Armenians as nothing more than a consequence of World War I is a distortion of history, a contrived excuse for an unthinkable crime against humanity. Portraying death by genocide as no different from any other death that occurred at that time is also a distortion of history and a callous reaction to human suffering. More broadly, the Turkish state has long sought to keep an iron grip on the exercise of the fundamental right of free speech in Turkey and abroad. That is critical, a critical foundation for studying the past and informing the present. The Turkish government and its extremist sympathizers have advocated for restrictive laws on expression and against legislation that recognizes the Armenian genocide, initiated prosecutions and smear campaigns of those who study the Armenian community's experiences at the hands of the Turks, and even resorted to violence and harassment against journalists and human rights activists who bravely speak the truth. These actions are condemnable, and they speak volumes both about the crime and the cover-up. But there are also countless voices who have spoken up and stymied Turkey's efforts to diminish the Armenian genocide. There are many among us who are working tirelessly to promote an honest accounting of the past so that truly, never again will the crime of genocide be carried out against Armenians or any other people.
Closer and closer, I think, we get our government to the point where they need to recognize the historical fact that is the Armenian genocide. And on 103 years of its commemoration, it is time not only that what I achieved in passing a Senate resolution, but that the Congress as a whole does it, and that the President of the United States recognizes it, because only with the truth can we move forward in the future. So I have seen a stronger and stronger understanding, a greater and greater commitment to the movement, and of course, in addition to the commemoration, our commitment to Armenia, to its future, to its development, to realizing the hopes and dreams of the Armenian people. I think that has been strengthened at the same time that we have been recognizing the genocide.
Best friend of Armenians in a Congress, founder of Congressional Caucus on Armenian Issues, Congressman Frank Pallone spoke to the audience.
We know that we continue to have those who would destroy the Armenian nation. We know about what goes on with Azerbaijan and trying to militarily still conquer Armenia or Artsakh. We know about what happens with the Armenians in Aleppo and some of the places in the Mideast who've had to move out of their traditional villages because of the civil war. So this is not something that's just in the past. This is something that continues. But it's also important for everyone, not just for Armenians, because we know that genocide continues to persist. I wish it wasn't true, but it is. Look at what's happening in Syria. Look at the chemical weapons that were used by Assad against his own people. We have to continue to be out there talking about genocide recognition for Armenia because we don't want genocides to continue against other people as well. So really, thank you for all that you do, because what you do is so important, not only for Armenia, but for the world and for the people all over the world. And the last thing I want to say, though, is also when so many of you are supportive of the Republic of Armenia and Artsakh, that is so important as well, because we do have these two nations. Maybe one day there'll be one nation and not have to be two separate republics. But we do have these two nations that need to be protected. Because now there is an Armenia. There are two Armenian nations. And whether it's development assistance or it's humanitarian assistance or it's providing for the education for the young people or it's providing jobs or helping with the infrastructure, so many of you are involved with, the Armenian National Committee, the Armenian Assembly, the AGBU, the Armenia Fund that has the telethon every year. And I just want to stress how important that all is as well, because it's only if we have a strong Armenia on the ground and we have a strong Artsakh that can defend itself from any kind of potential attack, that's the only way that we can also guarantee that Armenians and its culture will be here for many, many years.
I'm very optimistic because I do believe that first of all, there's so many more countries every year, and even states with the United States, it's almost 50 now, and so many towns and counties around the United States that have recognized the Armenian Genocide. So we are making progress. We can't give up just because the Congress hasn't passed it, because so many other countries and states in the U.S. have. But beyond that, I also think that there's so much more understanding that the genocide took place amongst the public in general, not only here in Europe, in the rest of the world, that more and more people are aware of it. And I mean, really, everyone understands that the only reason that Congress hasn't done this is not because it's not true, but because of politics. So I think you're making a lot of progress, I really do. But beyond that, I also think, I keep stressing, as I did today within our Armenia caucus, I think that Armenia as a nation is making a lot of progress. It's more democratic. It's a more market economy. The economy has improved. Fewer people are emigrating. And so, it's just really important to, do whatever you can as a diaspora, in particular, to make Armenia and Artsakh strong militarily, from an education point of view. One of the things that I was so impressed with when I went to Armenia in 2017 was that I could see that the schools and the institutions of higher education have really improved. I was very afraid 20 years ago that they were going to collapse. So there's every reason to be optimistic, and the day will come when the Congress recognizes the genocide.
Congresswoman Caroline Malone, member of Congressional Caucus on Armenian Issues, who consistently co-sponsors Armenian Genocide Recognition Resolution in Congress, addressed the audience.
Each year, we mourn the 1.5 million Armenians that were murdered by the government that was supposed to protect them, and we must honor their memory each and every year, and continue to call on the governments to recognize this atrocity for what it was, a systemic genocide perpetrated against the Armenian people by the Young Turks government. In 1915, members of the international community, including U.S. Ambassador Henry Morgenthau, recognized the mass extermination of the Armenian people as a crime against humanity. And it is important that more than 100 years later, the Turkish and American governments do the same. I am a proud co-sponsor of Reso 220, which demands that we recognize these genocides.
We are here today for the remembrance of the genocide of the Armenian people. It was the first genocide of the 20th century. Many countries have recognized it, and as the famous philosopher George Santayana has said, if you do not remember the past, then you're destined to repeat it. So it's important that history is recorded recorded appropriately. And we know that 1.5 million Armenians were martyred by the Turks in the Armenian genocide. And I am a member of the Armenian caucus in Congress. I represent portions of Manhattan and also Queens and Brooklyn. The cathedral, the Armenian church, is in my district, the first Christian church in the world. What an incredible, famous, wonderful legacy that the Armenian people have. And I work in Congress to support the Armenian people, not only in America, but in Armenia. They've been wonderful allies to us, and we need to help them in every way. Mr. Malone tells me, the head of the caucus, that the educational system is thriving, which is absolutely wonderful news. And today we remember those that were forgotten. And we have to remember that the terrible dictator Hitler said, "Who remembers the Armenians?" when he started to slaughter so many other people. So if we want to stop genocide, which continues to this day, we have to remember and accurately reflect what happened.
Professor David Schwartz from Kean University, who teaches courses on Holocaust and prejudice reduction, addressed the audience.
Memory is an important part of the work that we do at Facing History and ourselves. Our mission is intricately linked to memory. As a senior program associate at Facing History, I train teachers to work on engaging students from diverse backgrounds in an examination of racism and prejudice in order to promote the development of a more humane and informed citizenry. By studying the historical development of the Armenian Genocide, the Holocaust, and other genocides, students make the essential connection between history and the moral choices they confront in their lives.
As in previous years, the musical part of the event included performances of Armenian traditional and popular songs. Singer Marina Hakopian from Armenia, a graduate of Yerevan State Conservatory, performed Horovel of Qarabakh. Grand Commander of the Knights of Vartan, Dr. Gary Zamanikian, and Grand Matron of Daughters of Vartan, Diana Tukhmanian, made remarks.
Turkey has invaded the desert in Deir Zor to crush and destroy the bones of our ancestors, to wipe out the remaining relics of testimony relating to the death march and tragic destiny of 1.5 million Armenians in 1915. Our pain is part of the universal pain that humanity has joined forces with to eradicate and say no to the world, say never again to Holocaust, never again to the Armenian Genocide, never again to genocide.
We demand justice for those lives of the innocent that were brutally murdered. Genocide was a premeditated and systematic campaign, and the Ottoman Empire tried to eliminate us but couldn't. We stand here together declaring the truth of the Armenian Genocide. We must continue to make our voices heard today, tomorrow, and as long as it takes for justice to take peace.
Steve Mesropian from Armenian National Committee of America spoke from the podium.
For his first April 24th remarks, President Trump essentially reissued former President Obama's euphemisms. We sincerely hope he will have the moral conviction to properly commemorate the Armenian Genocide this year, following the will of the U.S. Congress. Genocide unpunished leads to genocide repeated. An unrepentant Turkey has aided ISIS and al-Qaeda forces in destabilizing Syria and laying waste to its historic communities. Atrocities and desecrations abound, and yet there is no moral outrage or call to action from the world's superpowers.
As in the past year, this year again, renowned attorney Mark Girakos arrived from Los Angeles to show his support and address the audience.
For those of you who are not old enough to remember, President Reagan recognized the Armenian Genocide. For those of you who are not old enough to remember, Congress twice recognized the Armenian Genocide. The Turks have spent 25 years and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to deny the genocide. Let them try to deny. Our mission going forward is restitution, not recognition. Our mission is the new R word, which is restitution.
What it's going to take is it's going to take this generation, the new generation, coming up, becoming politicians themselves and using political power. The Turks understand it. That's what they've done. They've denied history by virtue of their political moves. That's the same thing we need to do. So I'm actually quite optimistic about what's to come. I think that we've got a tremendous generation of young people who are going to make a sea change in what happens.
Last time we spoke, you were involved in few legal cases against Turkey. Can you give us an update? Has anything happened?
Yes. In fact, we argued the case last year against the Republic of Turkey. One of the judges who was on that case at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal had to resign, and so they just appointed a new judge, so I expect a decision anytime soon.
Eli Berberian and his band from Canada lifted the spirits of the audience with beautiful performance. Several members of community were presented with Knights of Vartan recognition medals.
With us today, someone very, very special. We'd like to recognize Major Sarkis Stepanyan, who's here to my left. He received the Marshal Bagramian Medal and Medal for Courage by the Armenian and Artsakh governments for trying to save a fellow soldier from a minefield during an Azeri attack in 2014. He lost 2 legs and 1 hand in the explosion. But despite the hardship, he continues his service to his motherland as part of the armed forces to this very day. We'd like to invite you up, Sarkis, Major, and the Knights of Vartan would like to present you with a medal as well for your service, for your dedication, for your commitment, for everything that you've done for our people. Thank you so much.
Natalie Gabrielian spoke on behalf of AGBU.
103 years ago, before the eyes of the world, the first modern campaign of genocide, systematically planned and unprecedented in scale, unfolded in the Ottoman Empire. By the time it had subsided, 1.5 million Armenian voices were forever silenced. With their disappearance and the forced exile of hundreds of thousands of survivors, the world's first Christian nation, an ancient people who had inhabited the Armenian highlands for 3,000 years, lost its historic homeland. But we did not allow these fires to burn us. Like a phoenix, we rose from the ashes of genocide to mark a rebirth. On May 28, 1918, 3 years after the devastation of genocide, the Armenian people found their resurrection in the founding of the First Republic of Armenia. In a very moving statement, Catholicos of all Armenians, Vehapar Vasken I of blessed memory, reflected upon this time by saying that in 1915 was the crucifixion of the Armenian people. But like our Lord Jesus Christ arose from the dead 3 days after his crucifixion, the Armenian people found their resurrection 3 years later on May 28th, when they created a little nucleus of a state near Yerevan, which would become the hope and focal point of the Armenian people who had suffered genocide. This year, in that same spirit of rebirth, the Armenian nation will proudly celebrate the victorious battle at Sardarabad and honor a historic expression of its sovereignty by marking the 100th anniversary of the establishment of the First Armenian Republic since 1375. It is this same spirit that has given life to an independent Armenian Republic, a vibrant and prosperous diaspora, and generations of Armenians whose demands for justice have echoed in the streets, courts, and the ears of Turkish deniers around the globe for over a century. Today, Armenia is indeed a beautiful and dynamic country with a rich cultural and religious heritage, overflowing with an intelligent, educated, enterprising, and creative people. Armenia's irrepressible spirit echoes in all of us.
Brian Artuni spoke on behalf of Armenian Assembly of America.
April is not just a historical event where the very existence of the Armenian people was threatened 103 years ago. It was only just 2 years ago this month that Azerbaijan launched a brutal attack against Artsakh and Armenia, killing innocent civilians. Today, as we gather here, there are reports that Azerbaijan has sent more tanks to the line of contact. And we know there were attempts to sell attack helicopters to Azerbaijan in violation of U.S. law. At the same time, Azerbaijan continues to target kindergartens in Armenia's Tavush region. Kindergartens, can you imagine? It's outrageous. And it is up to all of us to help in any way that we can. As we commemorate the Armenian Genocide together and pay tribute to the martyrs, we renew our commitment to their legacy and the hope of a bright future for all Armenians. It is up to all of us.
Remarks were also made on behalf of Hınçak Party Youth Organization.
Yet the Armenian Genocide is a fact. It is not debatable. It has been acknowledged and accepted as a fact by the entire world, even here in the United States. Today's Turkish government is no longer propped up as a democratic nation. The international community knows the Turkish regime is authoritarian. And just like their predecessors, they continue to discriminate against its own citizens, distress ethnic and religious minorities, and harass those who have the courage to challenge the government's failed policy of denial.
The event concluded with Very Reverend Father Mesro Barsamian to offer benediction, followed by high med performance by Astikner Choir. With everyone singing God Bless America, the 103rd anniversary commemoration of the Armenian Genocide at Times Square concluded.